We good. Hey, hey, it is Tuesday night, so you know what that means. You are live with the People's Pride Project, and this is our last couch conversation for the year. The last one. Y'all gonna miss it, but we'll be back. Um, and it warms my heart to be able to finish strong the way we started with my homie.
Oh,
You know it's true. You know it's true.
so sweet.
Y'all know him, Dr. Kevin Thompson. Y'all tell people to be. Is that just what you just be doing?
Well, yeah, the B is for my middle
That's
name,
Kev, y'all.
What's up? What's up?
So he was my first guest. Took a chance on me and my crazy, and was like, you know what? I'll sit down with you. So it only feels fitting that we're gonna finish up in the same spot.
I love it. I
You know,
love it. Full
because
circle.
exactly, you got to bring it back to move it
There
forward.
you go. There you go.
There we
Badu action, 360 degrees. So what's been up with you?
This
Yeah, I
try.
like it.
Yeah, thank you. Just I guess trying to have the conversations that probably I needed to hear, but I'm realizing other people needed to hear too.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
just trying to put it out there for so everyone has access to the information.
Right, right.
Because you know how we like to do. You get one toe in the door and don't want to let nobody else in, and then we have to
Yeah,
appeal to certain people, certain other demographics to get what
yeah,
we want. And we got to play all
yeah,
these roles. We're
yeah,
not doing that here.
yeah.
So,
Which is all the more reason for this conversation tonight.
absolutely.
All the more reason for it. We got to get out of the habit of, like you're saying, hoarding information and not sharing it. We live as we climb. We can't just, start climbing the ladder to success and leaving our brothers and sisters behind. It's not possible. It never worked. So why try now?
You know what? Show's over. No, I'm kidding. That's all we needed to hear. But no, seriously. Um, this for y'all that have seen the flyer, have not seen the flyer. Tonight's topic is the hoodoo of nation building. Sit with that for a second. The hoodoo of nation building. Now, those of you that know what you know, I'm gonna say it real clear. I don't care if you like it or if you don't. Hoodoo belongs to Black America.
Well,
Point blank, period. Ain't no questions. I don't care who told you otherwise. I don't care what Google said. I don't care what your other little friend that like to play in the woods says. I said what I said. It comes from us. It is us. It is an amalgamation of our work, our struggle, our trying to survive in
mhm.
an environment that isn't built for us, that wasn't intended for us, but to use us.
Right,
And how we had the protection and the understanding and the spirit and the strength and the wherewithal to say, nah, we're gonna flip this shit on you
right,
and we're still gonna make it work.
right, right.
So now that we've got that out the way, we know
Uh-huh.
what we're working with
Right.
because there ain't a black family, brown family in this country that, oh, it's just a superstition that has been passed down somewhere somehow. Nah, boo. Y'all
Yeah.
knew what you was doing.
Yeah.
Even
Somebody was intentional.
somebody was knowing.
Yeah. Somebody was intentional.
So, how do we relate that
Mm-hmm.
to nation building as a people, as a collective of black, brown, indigenous, trying to flesh out our own system in
Mm-hmm.
the midst of
Mm-hmm.
this?
Well, as you said, and basically piggybacking off that, even though I hate the term piggybacking, you're so fitting right now. Um, to belong, to create, to maintain a nation is, indigenous to us all. That's our natural right to have something of our own. You know,
Yes.
some land, some laws, some culture, some rules, some regulations, religion, so on and so forth. That's our natural right, right? So understanding this, it's only fair for us to use our beliefs, our practices, our wisdom to do just that. Now, again, if you know what you know, some things you can say openly,
Mm-hmm.
some things you have to keep close to chest. And keeping that in mind, nation building within a nation becomes a little more difficult. So you would need to use these particular tactics, just giving just enough to get by, but sharing enough underground to let people know what time it is pivotal if you really want to have quote unquote freedom, within this place that we call America. So there means that there needs to be this um shall I say this renaissance, right? Of what happened in the past. What did we do? How do we maintain sanity, and how did we make it, right? From the first time our ancestors set foot on this soil until now. What did they do? How did they develop this wherewithal? Like, what did they know? What did they share? What did they care to proliferate? And what did they discard, when they got here to ensure that we would be sitting here today, right? So,
Mm-hmm.
knowing then, understanding that, then also considering, okay, what was their knowledge? Where did they come from? How was the nation there, right? And was it something that we need to go ahead and reinstall here? Or is it something that we can kind of tweak and kind of make it our own right now? So yeah, just kind of using this whole mystical, magical approach to something that's very practical, and it's something that's very, very, very near and dear to my heart. You know, especially coming up out of the South. A lot of the major cities, people look like me,
Mm-hmm.
right? And when people go back home to Africa, I think it really brings them joy when they can see so many people who look like them in power. And how would we feel if we really had, the run and show of everything that we needed to do, everything that we wanted to do, considering education, politics, policy making, diplomacy, economics, agriculture, so on and so forth. You can't tell me that there hasn't been a little bit of hoodoo and all of that here in America,
Absolutely.
be it black and brown, be it white as a cracker, right? And saltine crack. I'm not calling anybody crack. I'm just saying, you know. Just saying, saltine crackers are like bleached white, you know.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, somebody has a court date and they calling, Mama Susie, right? Somebody's getting ready to go hit, the casino, and they want to call old Uncle Charles or whoever, you know. Or you want to create, a Disney story and you come up with Mama Odie. Like, where do you draw this information from?
Right.
So the influences are there, right? Within this gumbo of culture, we just had to develop a palate to realize that the flavors are there. Now, why? Why are they there? And why are they important to, number one, identify them, but number two, revisit them, and number three, employ them? Yeah.
I was like, was you asking me that? I thought you were going somewhere.
Oh, it was just a natural pause. I was just stopping. I was,
I was like, yes, keep going. Oh, all right.
I mean, I can. I'm just saying, I mean, just think about it. You know, um, basically, culture here in the United States is this combination of indigenous slash African slash European cultures, just this big mix match, right?
Mm-hmm.
But when it comes down to entertainment, when it comes down to the majority of the money made, it was made or created by people who look like us.
Absolutely.
So that means that number one, we have a God given right to have access to some of those resources. Number two, we have a God given right to have access to some of that power.
Mm-hmm.
Number three, we have a God given right to have access to some of that money
Okay.
and land and so on and so forth. So why not learn how to look to see you and all of that, and take that information back to your house and create a kingdom, right?
Mm-hmm.
Albeit in your neighborhood. But if I have 10 houses who are all on one accord, eventually that 10 will turn to 20, that 20 to 40, so on and so forth. So it's just taking bits and pieces, but doing something that we really fail to do a lot of times, shutting up. Like,
Mm.
shut up sometimes. Share the information, employ it, and then just watch it happen. And then fall in love with delayed gratification. We may not see it in the next two generations, but if you plant the seed, eventually it'll grow.
Now, you brought up a couple points that actually relate really well to the conversation that I had last week.
Okay.
I was speaking with Shauna Brown of Teach for Culture, and she was saying one of the major factors that relates to education is that there has to be a return to a knowledge of self before you try to adopt um, more European standards of education or environment or whatever those choose to be.
Mm-hmm.
So, if this is a thread that we're all recognizing, right, we need this return in order to move forward.
Mm-hmm.
How do we take those steps? Like, what, I don't want to say what grants us access, or what, in your opinion, is the switch that's like, okay, we're taking it from theory to action?
Okay. I think number one, utilizing this quote by Malcolm X, that only a fool would allow his enemy to educate his children.
Mm,
So reclaiming the education of our kids, right? Now, I'm not saying just pull them all out of, school today and teach them themselves. That would be great. But as opposed to solely relying on the American educational system, right, to basically assimilate your child, spend a little extra time on the weekends or each day teaching them something, right? Something that you learned as a kid, or something that grandmama or big mama or big daddy or uncle taught you. You
mm-hmm,
know what I mean? And then also, within African American studies, we always say you have to take two sets of notes. One set to pass the test, and the second set to actually know what's going on, right?
mm,
So learn how to read the media. Media literacy is very important. Learn how to decipher the good from the bad, right? The true from the false, the positive from the negative, right? But then also learn how to read. Like read it, okay, take it at face value, but comprehend it. What does it mean in America? But what does it mean for you within America?
right.
Then also, what does it mean for you as a global citizen? And again, just decipher and distill that information and share it. If you really want to learn something, you teach it, right? That's what we say in education. It's called peer learning. So, say for instance, my daughter, right,
Mhm,
came in as a pretty good reader, but she needs some help, so they put her in this. They call it an intervention or whatever, right?
mhm,
So she's long since accelerated, and she's up like a 2 or 3 levels above it now. Didn't really need it, but they like have her in the class because what she was doing, as she learned and as she learns, she teaches others. So the
mhm,
only thing it's doing is basically reinforcing the skills that you have developed. And what happens with us is that we go into the workforce and wherever and we acquire these skills, but we don't teach them to anybody else for fear that somebody's going to have a little more initiative and then, take our place,
mhm,
take our paycheck, so on and so forth, which is a very European way of thinking. This whole notion, the concept of individualistic capitalism, right? Pulling yourself up by your bootstraps, so on and so forth, and other fallacies, because they don't apply to us. I can't pull up anything that I don't possess. I think Martin Luther King said that, right? So with the education piece, take it and learn it, right? Learn what they're doing within the school systems, learn the structure, okay, learn how they make all these things happen, and then bring it back to your community. You may not have a charter school or something like that, but you can start underground networks. That's what other communities do,
mhm.
or utilize the whole parochial system. Black folks do anything. They do church. What are you teaching them? Right? Yeah.
Right.
Hmm.
And
Yep.
even speaking of church and church ties to hoodoo,
Right.
yeah, the pastor was who he was. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like
Yeah.
these systems for us have always overlapped so that we can keep our secrets in plain sight,
Right. Right.
you know? But I
Right.
feel
Right.
like over the course of time, either being distracted by the opportunities for advancement, alleged
Mm-hmm.
advancement,
Right.
being distracted by the potential for quick money, or I'm going to pull
Mm-hmm.
myself out and forget about everybody else.
Right.
We've, I'm not going to say we've completely lost because we're definitely, there's a return happening,
Mm-hmm.
but this
Mm-hmm.
concept of the shift, that
Right.
took us away from this unified idea.
Right.
And there was and going back to my original point, how the church was our foundation to stay who we are.
Mm-hmm.
And then it became, let's try to make it as much like them as we can.
Right.
And you lose
Right.
that thread. So when you say
Right.
to create like parochial schools and do things through
Mm-hmm.
the church has to recognize that yes, we're still the black church, but even
Right.
that black church has still distanced itself somewhat from what it
Mm-hmm.
needs to be or what it used to be to really keep the community
Right.
together.
Right. You got to get that warrior spirit back in the church. And what I mean by that is that we basically fought and were killed for our right to gather and to serve our creator,
Hmm.
you know. Um, and Asante, Malefi Asante said something real interesting. He said basically, and as it pertains to nations and the worship of gods and things of that nature, people basically deify images that look like them.
Right.
And here in America, we have been forced to deify an entity. I'm not talking about the essence of the spirit, but the entity that doesn't resemble our beliefs.
Right.
Right. So as far as the black church getting to a point to where they are not trying to mimic or imitate more European standards and or European approaches to Christianity, you have to look at how it was formed. Initially, when you're talking about the hush harbors, they were basically looking for an outlet, right? To
Hmm.
get away from, or to mentally or spiritually get away from the toils of extremely hard labor. And they needed something to hope toward, right? So Christianity served as this vitamin, if you
Hmm.
will, something to regenerate them. But as we matriculated toward, okay, social justice, community building with Bishop Charles H. Mason, starting the schools and the insurance companies and things with the Church of God in Christ. Um, I think what happened is that we lost that sense of urgency and the quote unquote danger that was associated with doing something that was counter cultural.
Mm.
You know, so
Yeah.
it's almost like how you'll see these rappers. Well, case in point. So this is it's a video that's circulating on Instagram. This black guy. I guess he's a business mogul or something like that. And he was saying that he heard his story, and this elder statesman said that his father walked, his son drove a Mercedes, his grandson drove a Ferrari, and his great grandson will walk.
Mm.
Long story short, what he said that tough men, tough times create tough men. Tough men create easy times create weak men create weak times. So basically, you have to raise warriors. So I think what's happening right now, and I'm not saying that we need to have this happen again, is that we're under the influence of supposed complacency,
Yes.
under the illusion of complacency. And there's no sense of urgency because we're not facing quote unquote impending danger anymore. Nobody's calling us the N word, and I'm only saying that because my baby's here. But you know,
Hmm.
nobody's saying, this, that, and the third, or get out the sidewalk blatantly now. Right?
Mm-hmm.
There's not this threat of bodily harm. And you really don't have to cling fast to anything because we think that we have it.
Right.
Right. We were all born in houses that had central heating and air units, or at the least a window unit. Right.
Mm-hmm.
We didn't have to worry about where our next meal came from. And it's almost like you have a lot of rappers, who quote unquote start from the bottom, getting it out of the mud, and their children come up behind them and they try to imitate the parents, but you didn't go through what the parents went through.
Mm-hmm.
And I can't blame you for wanting to create a better environment for your child, but you have to know and understand that your child is raised in a different environment and the same rules that apply to you won't apply to them. So how do you navigate that space? And I think the Black church hasn't found um, its rhythm, in trying to navigate this space. And I think what they're doing right now is they're trying to get the philosophy down, but they've been doing it for 150 years. Right. So it's more catchphrase now. It's more personal development and growth. There's more, um, no negative thoughts. It's all positive thinking and things like that. Well, you got to deal with the other side of that thing if you really want to be balanced.
Right.
You can't just lift weights like this in the positive and not focus on the negative. You're gonna have imbalanced muscle. Right. Oh, you all right? All right. I know this tea kind of strong, you know.
You
but
good?
uh, but yeah, I think that they're focused on more on feeling good now, as
Mm-hmm.
opposed to doing the work of like Vernon Jones and people who came before, like Floyd Flake and other individuals who taught their parishioners that while God is important, learning how to do for self is just as important. Vernon Jones basically um, taught his congregation the art of commerce. He would bring his cart to church, and
Mm-hmm.
at the church they would have like this open air market. They're selling, produce, vegetables, meat. If you make quilts, selling them all out there, right? Then they took this money and they start buying up real estate and developing it, and things like the building schools and formulating other businesses and things like that. We are the only ones who mistaken church um, as a soul saving entity only.
Okay. Okay.
Everybody else is employing some business. Now, I
You're right.
don't know. Yeah, I don't know if that's me. Guys, see, I'm lagging. I don't know if it's whatever, but yeah, it could be my internet. But yeah, I think that's the mistake that our institution, the Black church, is making.
And that does bring to mind a point for me because when you think about church, we're always like we're big on giving to the needy, taking care of your fellow man,
Right,
which is absolutely important, but we never seem to move forward from that
right,
or teach, okay, we want to give fish instead of teach how to fish.
right,
You know what I mean?
right,
So for you
right.
to say that, yeah, even if we're going to use the church as our central point, as our foundation for our learning, it
Hmm.
really does have to be more than you know what it has been. It has to, like
Yeah.
you were saying, as far as learning to buy property and like
Hmm.
I don't even know. Maybe I missed it. I ain't been in there in a minute because things, but maybe now they are doing more business. But the last time, like that
Some
wasn't
are, some are, but they're doing the same thing.
right.
I mean, they're following. I mean, they're following certain models, and they're doing the same thing.
Hmm. Hmm.
Um, but what they're not doing is actually, well, let me say it like this: you have some well-intentioned pastors. I'm not going to say all of them. I'm not going to throw all of them under the bus, but we are very, very stubborn in our beliefs, and it's kind of hard to pull us along.
Right.
But the only thing that we want to do when we get to church is to get our word for the
Hmm.
week, right?
Hmm.
Get our fix
Hmm.
and move through the week.
Hmm.
So For me to drop something like community building on you in the middle of a sermon or prior to a sermon will be a little jarring
Mm-hmm.
because you're already being beat up. So you have to consider the concept of audacity, right?
Right. Mm-hmm.
Nation building is audacious, right? You
Mm-hmm.
actually have to have some sort of nerve to say that you're going to establish yourself not only as a person, but a people, a community, a
Mm-hmm.
nation, right? On a piece of land, right?
Mm-hmm.
And execute your will and weave it throughout every piece of thread, within your nation. That takes some audacity because normally what happens with that, you have to realize that somebody's gonna die.
Yeah.
There's gonna be some bloodshed. There's gonna have to be some sacrifice. But who's gonna be willing to say, you know what, I can't see it for myself, but I can see it for my great 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 grandkids, and
Mm-hmm.
we're gonna build this. We're gonna institute this. We're gonna weave ourselves within this. So when they get to this particular point, they have a certain sense of pride. You know, it's almost like this argument how when we started to kneel for the national anthem, white folks were upset that we didn't have this level of patriotism that they had. The reason why we didn't have it was because we were stripped of our national identity. Depending on where we
Mm-hmm.
came from in Africa, we were brought here, and we were forced to make a trauma-filled prison our home.
Mm-hmm.
When I was, and you look at the Olympic scenes, all these people from all these various countries are proud to represent their country. And while our athletes, I think, are proud here, how much deeper would that pride be if they knew
That it
where
was
their
a
great, great,
choice.
great, 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 great grandmother came from and the village that they came from and what they actually did? Because
Mm-hmm.
everybody didn't descend from kings and queens. Not everybody, but we came from some of the same places.
But
But how much prouder would you be if I can say I am from, Uganda, of so and so tribe with this particular province. These are the gods that we worshipped. Here are some customs that we did. Here's some of the local music, so on and so forth. Some of the local flora and fauna and things like that. Some of the local legends, the beliefs, and the myths, and this is how we conduct business and things like that. And you bring that cultural knowledge within this space, and you're proud of that. That's a different level.
so then how do we, I mean, that's the one thing, the nuance about being black in America, right?
Hmm.
Um we're we're scrambling to create a tether.
Hmm.
You know what I mean? Like we know we're here, but we
Hmm.
know we're from somewhere else.
Hmm.
But we're trying to figure out, so how do we connect this somewhere else and still live in this present, in this situation?
Hmm.
There's always this flux
Yeah.
we're in.
Yeah. Yeah. Overcoming the fact that we didn't all, come from the same tribe, but we came from the same place. How about let's start speaking to each other again,
Okay.
right? Building camaraderie. Right. We have black code on certain things. Well, let's
Hmm.
let's add to the code. Okay, let's uplift, let's build, let's educate, let's inform as much as possible and
Hmm.
instill that into our children. Right. Back in the day, as kids, when you walked into a room and you didn't say anything, an elder could correct you and say, hey, we were sitting here. When you walk in a room, you speak,
Hmm.
right? Teaching little principles and little lessons like that. Start there, right?
Hmm.
And wherever you are, whoever it is, start learning your family's history. No matter how splintered, how far it may be, whatever you teach that. And you
Hmm.
teach that sense of pride. This is where you come from. This is who you are as a person. And when you see another person who looks like you, show them the same decency, the same respect, right?
Hmm.
And if they're not doing the same thing, encourage them to do so and teach them why. So once we develop community, right, in a sense, then
Right.
we can actually start talking about actual community building because there's a thread that most disciplines overlook as opposed to African American studies is spirit. There's a common spirit. Black folks have a common spirit,
True.
meaning that we can say certain things and we automatically know what you mean.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Uh, it's a couple of the videos, circulating social media, that kind of really talks about it in a comical way. But it's certain things that we do when we see something crazy. The looks, say everybody look at them like they say something crazy. Everybody,
Mm-hmm.
we all know, and it's some things that we all know, but we've conditioned to celebrate being able to live apart.
Okay. Can I stop you right there for a second?
Sure.
Now, I kind of dropped this topic of the myth of black excellence on you.
Yeah, you
Right,
did.
right.
Mm-hmm.
Just a little sprinkle, just a little sprinkle.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason why I feel like that's fitting here is a lot of us, you've spoken on it in several different facets as far as, um, you know, you said coming from nothing, creating something, creating a bigger something, going back to nothing, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And this idea of we're still living in divisions, but I feel like they're divisions that are we're not if we're not creating, we're perpetuating.
Yeah. True.
And
True.
right now, this is what I'm saying: the myth of black excellence. We tout this thing as it's what we aspire to, but is it really our way of creating an internal elitism to keep us separate?
Yeah. I mean, you could say that, but that's always been the case, just under different names.
Right. And this is my question. How, if we're
Mm-hmm.
supposed to be nation building and building community and
Mm-hmm.
building together,
Mm-hmm.
if whether it's through money, because now everybody's, a money guru, I can show you how to make this, I can show you, you know, it's
Mm-hmm.
wealth, wealth, wealth. And it's not wealth and share, it's wealth
Right.
for me because my family's going to be cool.
Right. Right.
How do we, if we know this is a problem that we have and that we've always had, how do we connect the dots to create this nation if we're dividing ourselves internally still?
I think you have to find some common ground when it comes to healing. Like, what are we going to base this nation building on?
Mm-hmm.
Is it going to be spirit? Is it going to be heart? Is it going to be finance? And just ride with it.
Mm-hmm.
Because, I mean, you can spend another 400 years trying to figure out what we're going to unify on. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
So I think we just kind of decide, just jump out the plane and learn how to use the parachute as you're falling. Because I don't really think it's like one place that you can start. But you have to pick somewhere to start, if that makes sense.
True. And you know me, what I'm hearing, not
Mm-hmm.
everybody can go with you.
All skin folk ain't kinfolk.
Say it again real quick,
All
please.
skin folk ain't kinfolk. All
It's
white folk ain't evil. I mean, it is what it is.
that's very, very true.
Mm-hmm.
And this idea, we want to come together, we want to work together, we want to build this thing because we see where the flaws are, but we
Mm-hmm.
haven't quite solidified a plan to fix it.
Right.
So, do we continue to try to create an overarching plan? Because we're not a monolith. So, everybody's
Right.
going to have their own version of what should
Right.
be done, needs to be
Right.
done, how it can be done. Or do we do like little pockets? Like, I'm just going to start my little community over here, and then you guys can do your thing over there. Like, how do we kind of rework this whole situation? Because we've been so
Mm-hmm.
dispersed.
I think the logical answer would require both and,
Okay.
because you may not have the reach to influence the overarching
Mhm.
thing, but it could be it could be like a national understanding of what we're going to do. And you use an old adage, hey, you bloom where you're planted,
Mhm.
and you build where you are, right? And eventually, what happens is, the spirit finds like individuals,
True.
and you just connect. You just connect. But I think if it's too many of us. It's too many chiefs and not enough Indians to use that terrible phrase. right? It's too many people who want to be the leader.
Do, mm,
I think so.
no.
I think so. And
Like
here's
who?
why I say that is
Go ahead.
because it's like, who's going to make the final decision on this is what we're going to do?
But that's what I was going to say. Like, who can we actually point to and be like, that's a leader?
Nobody. Nobody.
We
I
don't
don't think
have
you
any.
can use that now. You can't use that now. I mean, it's almost like gang culture. There's no centralized leaders anymore. Everybody forms their own little pockets. But what happens, you know, if we kind of studied that, is that these loose cannons, if you will,
Mm-hmm.
have actually, in some instances, gone against the tenets of the initial formation. And the leaders don't even recognize it anymore. The leaders are not recognized anymore and can get it like an op can. So what do you do? So do you need a centralized leader, or do you need splinter pockets? Like how do you orchestrate that?
Well, I mean, if you want to talk about, like Mandela said, leading from behind,
Right,
which is a way,
right.
but I see two issues with trying to create this leadership. Number one, we don't have, okay, we don't have elders like we used to.
No.
Pardon me.
Hmm.
Um, which is a huge, as far as like, basically, you're looking at your current generation like they're the end all be all, know everything, and they're somehow supposed to get it right
Hmm.
when we're already fumbling in the dark ourselves.
Hmm.
Number two, the majority of who we're considering leaders are people of notoriety, not necessarily people of education, not necessarily people with, a heartfelt desire to move the culture forward. These are people that knew somebody that now they're on TV or their magazines and
Right,
have money.
right,
So that somehow we're trying to say that, well, they did something right. So that qualifies them
right,
to care.
right.
And it really doesn't.
It
Like,
does.
who who can you sit back and say is actually taking on the mantle to say, because I have this access,
Hmm.
because I can do, I'm going to make XYZ moves. And it's not for just their specific little circle of people that they can touch. Like, who's making real moves, even though they have all of the resources and the access?
Hmm. I don't know if I can pinpoint anybody who's actually making those moves. I know some individuals in certain places, they're making moves within certain areas, but as far as like what we're talking about, I think one individual who has an actual plan for it that I know of would be like Dr. Claude Anderson,
Mm.
within his book, Powernomics. Um, Beside that, I don't know because, he's up in age now. He wouldn't be able to carry that out. Um, and then I don't think that you would need to really tax or give the burden of orchestrating that to one person. I think you need a council of some sort. I don't know if a triumvirate or quadrennium or whatever. I mean, you
Mm-hmm.
need you think about the movie Black Panther. Yeah, you had a king, but you also had the queen mother. And, you had the
Mm-hmm.
princess, but you had a council of people, a
Mm-hmm.
council of elders, a council of experts, and I think you need that. I mean, you just think about the various areas, right? That's involved in building a nation. You
Mm-hmm.
would need an expert from those areas because while I'm the king, that don't mean I know everything. I
Right.
just know how to bring people together, put them in a room. We can kind of crystallize a plan, and we can go from there. Um, like how will we defend ourselves? It's cool to join the gun club,
Yes.
but if we are invaded by another country, how are we going to protect ourselves? Like what defenses can we build? Right.
Right.
That's when it starts you kind of start talking about guns and butter then, like Melvin and Baby Boy. Like, okay,
Mm-hmm.
what's really okay? Um, what radio stations do we on? How are we going to communicate these directives to our people? Right? You look at Telemundo and Univision. I think I probably murdered that, but that's Hispanic television,
Right.
right? And whatever they want to communicate, they can communicate that. And as far as
That's
I know,
true.
the Hispanic and the Latin communities, they support that.
Mm-hmm.
right? Our I,
BET.
we got BET, but BET is not even owned by us anymore.
I know.
It's a
BET is
cash
like,
cow.
yeah,
But
exactly. It's not
it's a
playing
cash
nothing
cow
with.
though. It's
Yeah.
a cash cow. Now just think if all of those dollars were actually within the community, right? Yeah, I
Mm-hmm.
think they kept some of the essence, but the middle of it is black entertainment television.
Right.
It didn't say black educational television
Right.
or black economic television, right? And
Mm-hmm.
some instances you can mesh all of those, but you can't. Like you have, I think now you have the Black News Channel,
Mm-hmm.
BNC. That's pretty good. They have people like Charles Blow and Mike Hill and Tesla Figaro and some other individuals on there that are familiar. Um, but we don't really have like we have to think about things like that. Okay, how are we going to generate dollars? Like we have to talk about that.
Right.
Who's going to spearhead that? Because within the nation, even though you are a nation, you still have to do business with
Other
your
nations.
people and other nations.
Mm-hmm.
Now we got doing business with other folks down pat. That's probably most of our problem.
Right.
But learning how can we spend money with each other and having grace with each other, right? Like applying those same principles with each other. Okay, who's going to lead like our scientific creation? Um, what like where are we going to start? I think you have to set certain markers, right?
Mm-hmm.
We're going to focus on maybe agriculture. Okay, cool. Get that together. Get our food production down. Okay, we're going to need somewhere to stay. Okay, well, what are we going to live in? Is it going to be communal housing? I mean, individual houses, so on and so forth. How are we going to do that? See, I think it's I think even to broach the conversation, right, of creating a nation, I think you need about 25 years to kind of figure out what you need. But
I
here's
mean,
the
we've
problem with
had
that,
time.
huh?
We've
But
had
here's the thing with that
time.
though.
Mm-hmm.
It's like what Elon Musk said: if you give yourself 30 days to do something, it'll take 30 days. But if you give yourself 3 hours to do something, it'll take 3 hours.
Right.
Even though we know it'll take a longer time, how much longer can we wait?
Right. And to that point, are you proposing that we create the United States of Negro, like within the current
Ah,
U.S.
ah,
structure? Are we doing something elsewhere? Like
ah,
we're building this nation where?
yeah.
Like, what are we doing?
And I think that's where you would have to start because I mean, not every Negro can up and move. And then where are you going to move? And because even if you move, you're just going to form a colony somewhere else.
Right.
Even if you go back to Africa, if you don't know where you came from, it'll just be, hey, some expats,
Mm-hmm.
right? Until you become um, a part of the community and welcome back home in a sense.
Mm-hmm.
You're just an expat. So what are we going to do? We're almost uh, I mean, like an abandoned child
Yeah.
with no identity. Like, where do you build? So I think right now you
Mhm.
just build where you are. But I think if we would actually come together and fortify ourselves as a people, we will have a lot more influence now, as we used to be the quote unquote minority. I mean, majority minority. We're not anymore.
Nope.
So it's becoming more white and brown as opposed to white and black.
Mm-hmm.
But it's still kind of black because we're the ones. It's our trauma is always televised.
Yeah.
Our issues are always traumatized, and then we put forth legislation. Nothing happens.
Mm-hmm.
Then somebody piggybacks on what we're doing to get
Right.
it passed. You remember the whole George Floyd policing bill that didn't
Mm-hmm.
go through, but that anti-Asian hate bill went through.
We're always the stepping stone. We're the ones breaking down the barriers, taking the first step, taking the bullets, and then the ones that come behind us.
Well, I think they sit back and see what's going on, and they just do the opposite thing. They use some of the
Mm-hmm.
structure, but they do something totally opposite and get it done.
I don't even know if you want to say they used up because even look at affirmative action. Affirmative action was
Mhm,
supposed to I heard that affirmative
mhm.
action was supposed to level the playing field for us,
Right,
and
right.
we're not even the majority of the recipients.
No,
White women get the most affirmative action um,
really.
benefit. Yeah, the most
Hmm.
affirmative action benefits out of everyone. So this is what I'm talking about when I say we're usually the stepping stone. Like we do the work. We march in the streets and all woo woo woo. But what gets done doesn't benefit us the way it benefits everyone else because then
Right.
they find, oh, this new, how can I make it work for me? And everybody else gets a piece of that. Everybody else gets to
Mhm.
eat off of that plate, but we're the ones that had to die
Yeah.
for it.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So,
It's easily we're easily splintered.
mm-hmm,
We're easily swayed.
mm-hmm.
And what others have shown is that they have stronger solidarity than we do.
Can we talk about that just for a second?
Sure.
Trying not to put my foot in my mouth, but it might happen. So I apologize ahead of time. You look at the news, staying with current events and whatnot,
Hmm.
and you see that when certain things happen to people of color, we march, we make a sign. It's maybe a week of uproar. Nothing gets done. Other communities, uh, they get their feelings hurt, and the mountains move.
Hmm.
So, how do we combat that? Is that just another issue of us being a people that's too divided
Hmm.
and we're not willing and able to stand together and actually make something? Because I was actually in the midst of a discussion with a friend over the whole the baby thing, right?
Hmm.
That nonsense.
Yeah.
And they were like, "Oh, well, this, oh, you can't say certain things about certain people." How about we look at what they accomplished and be like, why can't we make that happen too? No, we want to go
What
back
do
to
they
church.
do? But what do
Right,
they do?
right. Why
Number
do they
one,
get that immediate response? And we've been fighting for how many centuries to get
you know,
nothing?
it's what they do. Their tactic is, you know what? It's going to affect your money. And cancel culture, they use it to their advantage.
Hmm.
We cancel things on Black Twitter,
We cancel each other.
right? We're always looking to drag somebody, read somebody. But again, it's guns and butter.
Hmm.
If and as funny as Dr. Umar's comment about just give me your grit money,
Hmm.
um, I actually looked up what he was talking about, and he wasn't far off base. We spent a lot of money on ground up corn. Literally, I mean, tens of millions of dollars. Um, our spending power is roughly $1.2 trillion.
Hmm.
Now we know money circulates, but if we were to infringe upon their circulation at least 30%, that's over $300 billion. You're going to respect my mind if all the money that I'm giving you suddenly stops. So we have to figure out what our power is. We haven't mastered the art of ownership as it comes to entertainment. We've made the richest people in the United States who happen to be black. Most of them are entertainers.
Hmm.
Very few of them are rich because of their business acumen. Not saying that there aren't, but
Right.
a lot of folks have been rich by acting, um, playing a
Music,
sport,
sports, yeah.
music, so on and so forth, right? If they were to say, you know what, I own this,
Hmm.
and you have to pay me a particular licensing fee for this, for my body, for my image, for my work, or what have you, and we control those dollars. Like I won't wear any shoe from this particular designer house, but I'm supporting this sister, this brother over here. Then maybe there may be some different conversations. But what happens is that Others come in and ingratiate themselves and get
Mm-hmm.
real nice and start finding out how much is on the books and things like that. And then they create these things called stocks and come up with these IPOs and start buying up stocks. And then next thing you know, the very thing that you created is no longer yours. So how do you keep those who don't mean you any good out,
Mm.
right? And how do you keep us, hopefully, who mean good in? See, it's a lot of facts. See, nation building isn't just about building a nation; it's also fortifying the infrastructure.
That's where that salt and red brick does come in. And that's what I
Hush,
heard.
hush your mouth, man.
That's what I heard.
Yeah, yeah. A little hot foot action. Yeah,
Mm.
yeah, yeah.
Keep people out, keep people in. Just
But literally, like, how are we going to do that?
hmm.
And like, who's going to put the chewing gum in the molehill, right? Like who? Like, okay, but then you have to think about it. If you concentrate all of your energy on keeping people out, then you're not building.
Right,
But if you're not considering that, then you're going to build something that's going to crumble from the inside out. So it's both and. You know what I
right.
mean? It's never like an either or. But
Oh,
you have to
absolutely.
start. I think with us, we just have to start. We just have to start. And once we start, then we'll kind of figure it out along the way. We got to think about it. The United States is one of the youngest nations.
Hmm.
It's roughly over 250 years. China is over 2,000 years. I'm not even going to talk about Africa.
Right,
You got too many zeros behind them digits,
right.
right? We've taught the world just about everything. And people will say, well, look where you are. Right. When you get old and crotchety. You don't want to listen to anybody anymore. Right. But it happens. The Chinese, when you ask them about this, just say the former president at the helm and, the influence of right wing um, Democrats and so on and so forth, they would say something like, well, in 300 years, it'll be over with. We don't have to worry about it. They got that much experience to wait it
Right.
out. As opposed to us, we automatically go into a tizzy. But again, they've been trained in a different way. So we're basically babes in this thing. And if
That's
we're learning from babies, we ain't really learning much. So we need to kind of learn back, where do we come from? Okay, cool. What did they do right? What did they do wrong? How can we build upon that? And the major mistake that I can see is not protecting your intellectual property, i.e., Greek
mhm.
philosophy, among everything else. Number two, being just a little too hospitable.
Yes. Can we stop inviting people to the cookout? Like at this point, my yard is closed.
Yeah.
I ain't got no more plates. We out of food. Don't look for me.
Hey, it's a pandemic. And it's been a pandemic for a long time. But we've always invited the diseased in because in
Mm.
our minds we can fix everybody. And
Right.
what happens to the caretaker? The caretaker generally dies before they're afflicted,
Yeah.
generally speaking. Because they're tired, they're worn down, they've used all their energy to take care and to keep this other person alive. Well, who's pouring into them? Who's pouring into Africa? I'm gonna tell you who's pouring into Africa, but it's not in a good way.
Absolutely. China.
Right.
Before it was France. Before it was Belgium. For it's been everybody because they recognize the wealth of not just finances but resources and every. There's been so much.
Just
So it's always been a
the sheer
snatch.
size.
Yeah, just it's always been a snatch. So,
So yeah, I mean, so I think this is more like a series as opposed to a conversation
oh, absolutely, and
because we have to. I mean, we have to consider there are so many things, and I know in his book, and I got it over here somewhere, but Claude Anderson just talked about a number of things, even like politicians. We're paying you to do what we want you to do. He says we rent them, and if they
hmm.
don't do what we need them to do, then we get them out. You can hold a special election and get them out. We believe that lie that they have to stay in there for their term. And as crazy as it is, the whole January 6th insurrection showed you what's going to happen if some get right is not, um, if it don't happen soon. People will one day figure out that, hey, we actually outnumber them.
No,
Well, it's they hadn't figured it out yet.
that's another thing we discussed last week, and I was kind of boggled. But it was like she said, Europe as a landmass, and all of the people that come from this landmass make up 8% of the total globe.
But how much do they control?
That was the point. We're living under this indoctrination of 8% of the world. Like that's factual. Like that's just the
But
given. It's the way it's
why
always.
do they control it though?
Because this is my theory.
Hmm.
It's probably not a well thought out theory, but it's my theory nonetheless.
Come on with it.
They used our openness and our ability to want to take in
Hmm.
everybody because that was our nature at that point. Yeah, we had conflict and things like that, but even in conflict, if we took in prisoners, those prisoners were eventually assimilated into our tribes and became, had roles in our society. So we
Yeah.
have this natural understanding of humanity that says, okay, even if we have a problem with you, we're open to accepting you. And that's what shot us in the foot because that left the door open for people that do not think that same way or whose intention was to overthrow, to colonize, to take over these resources, these assets. Now they're like, okay, we have an in. And if your heart ain't coming from the same place, you're going to use whatever means that you have to get what you want. So while it's a beautiful thing that we're such caring and loving and open and wonderful people, sometimes it gets our asses handed to us because we're not willing to be astute enough or perceptive enough to recognize when that's working against us.
You're far too kind.
And but that's why
You're
can't
far
nobody
too
figure
kind.
this shit out.
They use guns,
Mm-hmm.
germs, and steel. That's a documentary and a book.
Absolutely.
They took it.
Because there was an opening.
In some instances, it wasn't an opening. They just had for superior firepower.
That
There's only so much I can do with a stick and arrow. If
mm-hmm.
I compare that to a cannon that's shooting a metal ball,
That's true.
eventually I'm gonna lose out with the wood,
Mm-hmm.
and then I'm gonna scare you. And then it's in doc. They use psychological and physical warfare.
Yep.
They use manipulation. They were
Mm-hmm.
cunning. They were
Mm-hmm.
conniving. Right? They were brutal.
Mm-hmm.
That's what they show. And now they're using diplomacy, but it's backed up by
Right.
violence, conniving, espionage, so on
Mm-hmm.
and so forth. So, I mean, what my math adds up for me is that if you really want this thing to work, you gotta be willing to do whatever you gotta do.
Which goes back to us being too damn nice.
Hmm.
This whole every time something happens or something happens in court and the family of the victim is like, oh well, I
Yeah,
forgive you. I'm
whatever.
turning, I'm going to be the bigger person and who no. I dare you, mama. I know you watching. Some shit go left, I'm fucking everybody up. There is
Pretty
no
much.
forgiveness. There's no forgiveness happening.
Mm-mm. And then they're threatened with hell, fire, if they don't forgive. Now,
Mm-hmm.
isn't that interesting? Even when in the whole Botham Jean case, when the judge
Mm-hmm.
hugged the little white girl, and
Not happening.
I think the bailiff was patting her on the back, and somebody
Not
gave her
happening.
about
Not happening.
really
Not
like wow,
happening.
yeah. So yeah,
No. I'm
yeah,
tired of us saying, please forgive,
right,
please listen.
right, right,
And then we
right,
wonder why
right,
we keep ending up in these situations. If there
right,
are not consequences,
right.
there are no changes.
Right.
Even if, I mean, that's basic. Your therapist will tell you that
Right.
words without action
Right.
mean nothing.
Right.
So I'm not gonna let you get away with no, 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 no.
Right. Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
but like we said, this is far longer than a singular conversation,
Yeah. It
and
is.
this is why you will be teaching
I'm ready
a
for
be teaching a course on nation building infrastructure and how we're gonna get this done. Because even if a couple people figure out the blueprint and we could somehow get the minds to work together,
it. Hmm.
then I feel like we'll be in a better off situation than
All
where.
we need is one. All we need is one. One seed can grow a tree. All we need is one.
But it's got to be one that is not willing to be swayed by the celebrity or the money or fear or any of these external. Like you got to be that one's got to be a tree already, like firmly
Yeah.
planted, roots in the ground.
If they can stay alive long enough,
Right.
rappers can show you that hey, they got the power and influence. But every time they go back home, we kill them.
Hmm.
So that's the sad part. So yeah. So yeah.
Yeah. It's much deeper than one conversation.
Yeah.
And thank you ever so much for joining me.
Thank you for having me, dear sister.
You're very, very
I'm
welcome.
honored.
um, but yeah, this is how we're ending the year. This conversation for me was not so much about having answers, but thinking of the pertinent questions and looking at how do we really approach these things. Like we keep
Yeah.
saying, this is what we want to do, this is what needs to be done, but we're
Right.
fighting over silly petty things,
Right.
and we're not making the actual headway that needs to be made.
Right.
So that's saying this is to be continued.
Dot dot dot.
Exactly. And since I only hold people hostage for about an hour, we're right there with you. So
All righty.
thank you for coming out.
No problem. Thank you for having us.
Go handle
Peace.
your handle.
All
Bye.
right. Goodbye.
And this has been another couch conversation. This has been the last one for the year. Thank y'all for rocking with me. Thank y'all for just showing up, maybe learn a little something. Hey, tell me where I'm right, tell me where I'm wrong. But this is more about having the information available for us to share with each other, to speak unabashedly, un unapologetically about the things that matter to us. Black, brown, indigenous, people of color. This is the us. Everybody else has their own thing that they want to do, and they have the access, they have the wherewithal, the somehow they have the ability to get it done. And I want us to have a platform that can enable us to get it done. So, Couch Conversations will be back 2022. Get some more stuff lined up for y'all. And we're just here to share the knowledge and do something with it. Not a big Bible quoter, but faith without works is dead, right? So that means we can't just sit on it. We just can't share words. We have to actually do it. So until 2022, this has been Couch Conversations with the People's Pride Project, and I'll catch y'all later.